Hi everyone, this is Anna, Coco and Izzy's presentation and we're going to be looking at Amor de Don Perlimplín con Belisa en su jardín, particularly looking at the second scene of the play. So in this scene we see Perlimplín and Belisa on their wedding night in their bedroom. Following his discovery of his impotence, the newlyweds turn out the lights to go to sleep, at which point a curtain is drawn over the stage by two duendes who then face the audience and mischievously discuss their role in the drama. Rereading the scene in the wider context of the play and Lorca's theatre as a whole, some of the themes we picked up on were the depiction of gender roles, with the direct contrast between Belisa's overt sensuality and sexuality and Perlimplín's infantilization and experience, as well as the role of the duendes within the scene. So the first character we're going to look at in our presentation is Belisa, Perlimplín's much younger wife. As a character, she epitomizes sensuality and carnality and has been described as el deseo físico puro personificado, el instinto sexual poetizado. As the play was written during Primo de Rivera's dictatorship, this portrayal of Belisa was the complete antithesis of the traditional Catholic woman which was promoted by the regime. This scene clearly illustrates her sexuality as we find out she takes on 5 lovers in one night and she reveals her somewhat voracious sexual appetite. Her sensuality is heightened by the contrast with Perlimplín, as her overwhelming erotic presence makes the virginal old man beside her seem infantile, something which we'll look at further in the next slide. She first appears in the scene dressed head to toe in lace, something which we immediately associate with sensuality and sex, making Perlimplín, who is vestido magníficamente, look comical by comparison. She has a small monologue following her entrance where, upon hearing guitar music playing, she cries out, «Ay, el que me busque con ardor me encontrara, mi sed no se apaga nunca». Here, she seems to be alluding to her insatiable sexual appetite, a shocking statement for contemporary audiences which promoted traditional Catholic notions of womanhood. This is then furthered by her almost ethereal exclamation, «Ay, qué música, Dios mío, qué música hay, pero soy yo o es la música?» The disjointedness of her words here conveys her almost breathless ecstasy, taking on a highly sexual rhythm and defying the fixed ideas of female sexuality of the period, which sought to restore the sexual order threatened by the transformations occurring during the 1920s. In an exchange with Perlimplín beginning Son las cinco, there's a marked contrast between the man's low voice and the woman's loud voice. It's clear that the woman dominates the man as the mother dominates the child. In this exchange, he seems completely clueless, asking her questions saying, «Have you kissed anyone else?» And she just completely denies all allegations, thus infantilizing him further and making her seem like the femme fatale figure. Following the intervention of the duendes, the couple wake up and he questions her as to why the balcony doors are open and why there are 5 hats in the bedroom. Yet she manages to dismiss these questions by simply saying, «Así es la costumbre en el país de mi madre», in an attempt to fool Perlimplín. She seems somewhat coquettish in her responses to him, asking if she's kissed anyone else, dismissing his allegations by saying, «No soy mentirosia». Her manipulation here contributes to his infantilization as she seems cunning and completely in control of the situation, whilst he appears rather clueless. By creating this hypersexual, crafty woman who defies Catholic ideals of women as wives and mothers, Lorca was urging the audience to consider the relationship between women and sexuality and whether traditional notions of femininity were still relevant to the period the play was written.
So, the second character we will look at is Perlimplín, the protagonist of the play. Whilst we have discussed Belisa's overt sexuality that subverts the conventional role of women, this section will explore Perlimplín's infantilization and powerlessness. Belisa repeatedly uses diminutive nouns to address her husband, calling him caballerito, maridito, hijito, and Perlimplinito. The suffix ito reduces him to childlike status, labelling him as submissive. However, it simultaneously shifts Belisa's position within the marriage to one of dominance and power, again reversing gender roles. Belisa, therefore, empowers herself by using belittling language and consequently dominates their relationship. Perlimplin's lack of authority is also demonstrated in his question to Belissa, ¿Me das permiso para quitarme la casaca? Lorca creates an inversion of gender roles, whereby the older man, Perlimplin, lacks power, and the female lover, Belissa, is rendered powerful. The striking contrast between the two characters makes Belissa's overt sexuality more shocking and even more comical, encouraging the audience to question the absurdity behind such rigid gendered identities. Moreover, towards the end of the scene, following the intervention of the duendes, Perlimplin wakes up with horns on his head, a typical symbol of cuckoldry. At this point in the play, the audience are aware that Belissa has been adulterous. Indeed, aparece Don Perlimplin en la cama, con unos grandes cuernos de ciervo en la cabeza. However, as Badenés argues, though he is fully aware that Belissa has cheated on him, his cuckold condition does not faze him as he has fallen madly in love with his wife. In this section, Perlimplin fails to adhere to the honour code, a notion stemming from Golden Age theatre, whereby the husband must duel the lovers in order to restore his honour. Hence, he subverts the gender-codified rules of honour, as McDermott argues. Instead, in this scene, he fulfills cuckold criteria completely, believing Belissa's deceitfulness.
So, before we discuss the role of the duendes, I'm first going to define what a duende is in order to provide some context as to why Lorca chose this character to appear in the scene. So, the Real Academia Española defines a duende as espíritu fantástico con figura de viejo o de niño en las narraciones tradicionales que habita en algunas casas y causa en ellas trastorno y estruendo. The key point to take away from this definition is that these are traditional characters of Spanish folklore who cause mischief. In his article, Don Perlimplín, Lorca's Theatre Poetry, Ferguson gives the following description of the duendes. These sprites giggle and chatter with the inhuman merriment of little girls aged 12 or 13, say bright eyes, heartless, knowing little creatures, as children are when they are full of shrewd curiosity, but not yet seasoned by any human experience. This conveys a sense of mischievousness and of innocence in the way that they narrate the scene, knowing that the outcome does not affect their characters, so they're inviting the audience to share the chance to laugh at the taboo of the cuckolded man. In this scene, the physical role of the duendes is to draw a veil over what is going on in the house and mask the goings-on to the public. However, the discussion they have whilst doing this ties into the greater theme of the play, which is the role of imagination. It seems as though the duendes provide an interlude before the great drama of the play, which is the finale, in this interlude, Lorca reminds the audience that although there are many farcical elements present, that this play is telling a deeper truth and it's not just a comedy. It functions as a pause before this truth is revealed in order to capture the audience's attention and make sure that they're involved with the events of the play. So by following the discussion of the duendes, it makes the audience decide whether or not the misfortune should be made public and ask them for their own moral judgment of the matter. So whether, like Duende 1, they think they should do right by Don Perlimplín, or like Duende 2, they should reveal the misfortune to the world. This view is supported by John Lyon, as Lyon says in his article Love, Imagination, Society and Amor de Don Perlimplín con Belissa en su jardín. The function of the duendes is to involve the audience as a participant in the action, to invite them to collaborate with their prejudices, or, in other words, to engañar con la verdad. But what does this actually mean? So, Lyon puts forward the opinion that Lorca is not trying to gain our sympathies for the misfortune of Don Perlimplín, but instead he's actually aiming to make us, the audience, laugh at his misfortune. So this is his wife cheating on him with 5 different men on their wedding night. Instead of revealing all the gory details about Belissa's betrayal,
The duendes tease what has happened whilst leaving the rest of the audience's imagination. And the presence of the duendes and the role of the imagination is to show how the expectations of the audience are prejudicial against Don Perlimplín and how this undermines the complexity of his emotions, that he's not just a comic cuckold character. Imagination is key here, as it is Perlimplín's inability to have a physical relationship with his wife that leads him to developing the capacity to imagine. The duendes allude to this birth of the soulful Perlimplín in the line, El alma de Perlimplín, chica y asustada como un patito recién nacido, se enriquece y sublima en estos instantes. And Lyon sees this as Lorca employing irony to make the audience laugh, but also him being literal in the sense that Perlimplín's soul is enriched later in the play, once he accesses this imagination. So, despite this line being intended as comical, there lies within it a subtle deception of the truth, which is Perlimplín developing his imagination and capacity to feel. Now, if I just go back to the point about the duendes showing the expectations of the audience and the prejudicial nature of this, there's an academic called Paul McDermott who argues that this questioning that the duendes provide is a part of meta-theatre, which injects self-consciousness into the theatrical process. And this is done by the unmasking of characters, which gradually allows for the stable notion of identity to be collapsed. Arguably, this is what the duendes are portraying when they say that the faults need covering up. They need to tapar las faltas ajenas. This draws attention to the true nature of the play, by implying that there are circumstances here that need hiding in order to be found out, and hinting that the true identity of Perlimplín will be later revealed, thus illustrating why this pause in the drama is so important and how it marks a shift in the events to come.
So, looking at this scene in relation to the play as a whole and the wider general themes of the play and Lorca's theatre in general, we believe that the role of the duendes are to act as a social critique and mirror the voice of society and the audience, laughing at Perlimplín's supposed cuckoldry. Regarding Lorca's approach to gender roles in the play, which are examined closely in this scene, we can argue that part of his raison d'être was to challenge the restrictive gender norms of the time. Neither character fit archetypal moulds or notions of femininity or masculinity, so Lorca was inviting the audience of the time to consider these fixed ideas about gender and identity and question their validity within contemporary society. So some of the questions we've come up with to think about in the seminar are, does Perlimplín fit the archetypal cuckold figure? By playing with traditional gender roles, what do you think Lorca was trying to do? Do you think the characters of Perlimplín and Belisa label the play a farce? And by writing the interlude with the duendes, what was Lorca aiming to do? Thank you very much for listening.